Step of gesture. No need to stand, glasses to see better, to brighten your eyesight, to illuminate points of view, or to better enlighten the mind. No idea, no image, no brightening perception, no illuminating vision, no vision or the visible, but the invisible. The invisible is neither inside nor outside, neither the beyond nor the inside of that, but in the footsteps. No sight, no life, no sound, no gesture. It is the atmosphere of spring, autumn, summer, and winter, floating time, uncertain, undecisive, without outline and without limit, of which their moods are the color of each moment, which gives it the true form of life. The invisible is neither inside nor outside, neither the beyond nor the inside of that, but in the footsteps. 안녕하세요. Welcome to a time of share reading on graphic listening. A cart full of books in Balgiu Book City. Books on walking and sound. Books on walking sound that are not only books, but are boxes. An inscription, a graphic notation that is also a record. Letters home as we were walking. And an envelope with poems. Go to cold mountain. Cold and high mountain. Go to the mountain. Go and return from the cold mountain. Go and return from the cold mountain. So I want to take you on a walk along my practice, along a few examples of things that I'm concerned with. And among these things is reading. Reading as a practice of designing and listening as a practice of composing. Composing music, composing gesture, composing publishing. Publishing and distribution as a mode of designing, as an approach to materializing language with tools such as the typewriter, with body, gesture, and space and time. The manipulation of object. Unfold this paper and find a poem. Fold up this paper and find a poem. Unfold this paper and find a poem. Unfold, fold, unfold, and find a poem.
Sitting in a room different from the one you are in now. I am recording the sound of my speaking voice, and I am going to play it back into the room again and again until the resonant frequencies of the room reinforce themselves, so that any semblance of my speech, with perhaps the exception of rhythm, is destroyed. What you will hear then are the natural resonant frequencies of the room, articulated by speech. I regard this activity not so much as a demonstration of a physical fact, but more as a way to smooth out any irregularities my speech might have. I am sitting in a room different from the one you are in now. I am recording the sound of my speaking voice.
So in 2021, a library in France, in the south of France, named Médiathèque d'Ivry, invited me to contribute to a season of events. And I was very interested to work with the collection of the library. It's interesting because we are in Balgiu Book City. And the life of books is something that I think we share a concern for. In libraries, sometimes there is not enough room. The basket is too full, and books have to be thrown away, discarded. I was wondering, what can we do with these books that were going to disappear? And I wondered if there would be a possibility to transform them. And so I asked the library if we could go in their depot and gather all the books that were going to be thrown away and transform them with the audience. And so we did 3 workshops where, together with the audience, we cut and pasted and changed the old books into new artist books so that the new artist books could become, again, part of the library as design and art objects. So the gesture of working and designing here is one of transformation, of modification, and also of paying attention to the life of objects. And together with the group of listeners who are here, we are concerned during a workshop that we're currently doing at PaTI, reflecting how listening with our senses, listening by designing, can affect our actions, our gestures in the world. It is the case of this small newspaper that I had a chance to edit with a friend, which is concerned with the question of sound poetry and how sound poetry can be translated and communicated through printed matter. How a journal can become a score. How printed matter is at the same time documenting something that happened in the past, but perhaps can also be a graphic notation for the future. And please let me know if I'm going too fast or if my English is too complex. So this journal started as a reprint of an article by the poet Lily Greenham. And this poet was working with sound, with typography, with concrete poetry. And so we decided to reprint this article on the center spread of the journal and to organize a constellation of documents around this main text. And because it's a newsprint, we both have pages of a newspaper, but we also have forms that resemble a poster. Rain as soundtrack. So concrete poetry is something that I've been quite interested for a while, and in 2020 with a friend we co-edited an anthology of concrete poetry called Women in Concrete Poetry. It gathered over 50 women artists who unfortunately didn't get the attention they deserved in the main anthologies of the genre during the 20th century. And so we decided to collect their works spanning from the late 50s until the late 70s and to articulate them into a publication. Language and space, units of words, meaning and change, letter forms and time, mechanic forms and handwritten forms, collage, typography as score for movement, technical and scientific language as poetry, typewriting exercises as music, as gymnastics, repetition, ballet, and daily life, literature, machines, speculative, kinetic dance of numbers and letters. Asemic writing, scores of punctuation. So publications tell stories. And with a friend, Olivier Lebrun from France, we initiated a project called Bibliomaniae. Bibliomaniae is an editorial puppet show. So we are invited in different places, and we bring a collection of publications, oftentimes from our own collection, and we tell the story of people who have been caught in the frenzy of collecting books, who are possessed by the vertigo of objects, who love books in their stories and their materialities. During the pandemic in 2021, we were invited in Leipzig, in Germany, to present one of the puppet theater plays. So we were filming this at home with a little background and with objects.
Give me a deposit, give me a permanent loan. Is it a home by grade? Is it the binding department? Are we straight? Is it a gentleman? Let's call it a gentleman. And where is the robot, Stephen? There is the robot.
So the puppet theater show with books was broadcast through Zoom, and what was framed was the background of the curtain and the manipulation of objects, light and staging, and the puppets appear as in a show and tell game. What you're hearing now is a piece by Alvin Lucier called I'm Sitting in a Room that plays with the feedback of the sound of recording. And there is this idea of what listening to what is broadcast composes in terms of music. Another thing I've been quite concerned with in companionship with storytelling is that of education and learning together in different places, in France, in Switzerland, kind of traveling through Europe and doing workshops. And I'm very interested in how each situation of work becomes an opportunity to create with. And in this case, the notion of relationship between body and gesture and graphic design was experienced during a work that we've done with the students of Lyon in France and the students from Lisbon, the students of a designer named Marco Ballesteros and a choreographer named Sarah Vaz. And together we explored how a space become a page and how content can be articulated with our bodies. So these students are graphic design students and also dance students. So during one of our work sessions, we had one space which we used as a page, and then the audience in the early afternoon we gathered and started to work with objects, and then the audience was joining the reading as it was unfolding.
So I was checking on him, his medicine. He said he's better today, and when he goes out to the beach, he just takes the color out because otherwise he wants to go.
The students from Lisbon spoke Portuguese and English, the French students spoke French and English, and it was also work of translation and playing with understanding. What do we understand and how do we understand without understanding each other? As the afternoon unfolded, the stage became more and more alive and inhabited with texts and a poster that we had printed in magenta, which we had printed in Lyon, and we had brought this poster as a tool for communication, as a tool for conversation. In the case of this particular piece, we started to write words on the poster and then cutting it out so that it designs different pathways that one can read and one can also move along and dance with. So these are techniques of improvisation in dance that are also very much inspired by the work of João Fiadeiro, who is a Portuguese choreographer. And this is a book that Marco Ballesteros designed about the work of João Fiadeiro. And thus, this choreographer works with objects that are placed on a surface, and each participant, each dancer, chooses different parts and composes a piece together. So the idea is to respond to what each person has done with something. And the idea is to not let your ego take over the collective composition. It is really about working together.
I'm looking for bananas. I'm looking for this. I'm looking for this. I'm looking for this. I'm looking for this room. This life is bananas. This life is bananas. Have you seen this broom? Please, have you seen broom broom? Have you seen broom broom? This life is bananas. Have you seen this broom? This broom is bananas. Have you seen this life? Have you seen this life?
Composing, rearranging, articulating meaning in space, telling stories.
I remember a black Suzuki. Ich erinnere das Tischgebet. Ricordo dell'ufficiale della Guardia Svizzera. I remember aspirin. I'm thinking about Shakespeare's garden.
In 2016, I was interested in exploring the relationships between writing and designing. First, it started as an investigation based on a personal collection of books that I started when I was a student. Trained as a designer, I had trouble just staying on the side of form and not engaging with content. I was very interested in how we can get closer and closer to what we lay out in the page as designers, to text, image, sound, how an object is published. I wanted to understand more about this, so I started to collect objects from the past and the present. And so this collection led to the Designing Writing project. Here on the screen you see the archive of fragments that I pick regularly as a journal. The idea is to use tools such as social media as a way to share content and to share knowledge. How we can subvert existing strategies and tools for circulation and to use them in a different way. It feels like that's also the work of a designer. How do we not only invent objects from scratch, but how do we think about existing channels and how do we travel through them? And so this was the origin of the Designing Writing project, which then developed to become a research project in Switzerland at Écal, where I was teaching. So in 2017, we created a research program together with students and teachers from Écal in Lausanne, and we invited publishers, authors, theorists, designers to come speak about their relationship to writing. So what became really interesting is the ing of designing and writing, the present continuous, the fact that something is not finished. The conference started before the conference started, and it will continue beyond once it ends.
Because I can see the future,
And so
and it's a place
many friends came to speak
of here.
and to present their work. And once the research project in Lausanne had a first chapter ending, we wondered how we could continue distributing publications that the publishers had brought during the initial Designing Writing event. And so I was very much concerned about the moving library. And so I was also very interested in how we can show and distribute books and present books outside of the normal conventional situations, such as libraries and schools and bookshops. And I started to wonder if we could present books in settings as the forest or the beach or the mountain. And so, for instance, I had these big containers for gathering water, for collecting water, and I had the books inside, and I can bring them to the beach and people would discover a collection of independent artist books in spaces that they wouldn't necessarily see them or encounter them. So this is part of the idea of taking steps as a central approach to designing, footsteps and rolling steps. So this is some excerpts that I will show from a film that was produced about certain aspects of my practice by an editor named Emery Norton, who is at the moment editing a collection of interviews with designers and editors. It's a cycle called What is an Editor? And it will soon be released later this year. And so I'm showing a few excerpts of this film that kind of connect with this question of listening and ongoing practice of attention.
And in fact, I am complacent in that I am indifferent to appearances.
We'll have
my apparent indifference and my apparent complacency would seem to be the result
We'll
of
have been digitizing a memory.
I am well fed. I am well dressed. I am to all appearances without to me.
The sun
No one
will have been rising.
I cannot understand the value of my resources. That I can have undertaken actions I can consult and place and making a great use of society. These outward manifestations.
I will have
these
been
appearances
engendering
show my
ectoplasm.
if I mean to say spiritual.
So two things that are really quite important are printing as a way to create objects that are sensitive, that have a particular materiality to them. And we have the chance to share a studio in Paris where we have an offset printing machine. And so this offset printing machine is used as a tool for learning together and for producing accidental experiments in printing. So I've been concerned with working around attention with a group called the Order of the Third Bird. Back 3 years ago, I met this group that is operating internationally as a collective that pays attention to things in the world. So it could be spaces, but it could be objects as well. Now, if I take this box, there's different ways in which one can pay attention to this box. And design, I believe, helps us to pay attention to the things that surround us. I truly do believe that. And so this group called the Friends of Attention, the Order of the Third Bird, these are collectives that try to develop strategies, performative strategies, theatrical strategies that help us to focus and channel our attention better. So together with this group, we wrote an instruction on how to pay attention to the ocean, to the horizon. And so this is an offset plate. Yesterday, we had the chance together with Elme and a group of the listeners to go and visit the great print shops near El Giro. And we saw some of the machines that produce printed material, such as the offset press. And this is one of the metal plates that we use to print. And we engraved this with an engraving machine, and we wrote a protocol about how to pay attention to the horizon. So this was an event that we did with this collective of the Order of the Third Bird, 40 people by the seaside, gathering together in a line, standing, looking at the horizon, looking at the environment of the horizon, paying attention at a particular point in the horizon, distantiating ourselves from this horizon or changing perspective, and looking from different angles. And then finally realizing the horizon by walking in the ocean
Free of the presence of the mirror. Gradually then
until the water
he became me in many parts of himself because we are not strong enough to be able
came up until our eyes.
to him because he is a man. And my particular woman is in him got to be as unbearable to me. As
So these instructions were also distributed to the audience on the beach.
I have heard, or I imagine I have heard that in other parts of the world, among other peoples,
I
this is
will
not
have been leaving
that among
a
some peoples of the
This
world,
is the final print. So we had the sheet that was printed offset, and then we were able to produce
our case could be part
these instructions. So here you could see
would have
the 5
ourselves. No, that's not true. We're
paragraphs that were used for the protocol, and then we ripped the pages so as to have several attempts. And what was really quite interesting by working with the offset machine is that we had very different shades of blue as we were working with the technical process, and we were mixing water and solvent and playing with the accidents of printing.
suffixes won't have been done. Eyes will have been after reading.
Nice.
So each person on the beach could join our event. Some did, some were a bit surprised by the fact that a group of people would just stare at the ocean.
The body of present continuous.
Kiss, warm, wild, wind, bliss, heart,
Speaking,
So the idea that an object that is printed can be multiple. It's a series, it's produced as a series, but every single copy, every single print is different because the life and the space and the time and the energy that you placed into it is very different as well. It's something that is very important.
index cards
Carrying books around again.
between the forest and the river. That is, learning from the forest and the river.
So to see the type of objects that we have produced on this machine, this was a conversation that I did with a friend of mine from Amsterdam. Being when working at a distance, we collected different instructions for inventing imaginary books and drawings, diagrams that give life to this book. This was done with my friend Juliette Lépinot. And as you can see, we worked with the gradients of being able to print
Glyphing.
with the gradient of colors.
Oh, so many glyphs. Branches. Leaves. The shape of a puddle. Something like a stone. Moss. The shape of maybe mushrooms.
Puppets again, and radio as sound, movement.
Air. A dot.
Together with my friend Valentina Trojanova, we hosted a show called Ksh, Something, Something.
A dash.
And this show was concerned with focusing on a publication that we would try to unfold through sound.
On va avoir un son qui va être produit au niveau de l'environnement. Ce qui est important de comprendre, c'est que le son, en fait, va se rendre jusqu'à nous via les ondes sonores. Et ça, c'est transmis directement par l'air. Donc, elles peuvent arriver de n'importe quelle direction.
Biblio whispering. Being close to the animal. Papering. Tools for seeing and reading. Finding interest in objects that are designed, in objects that are pseudo-designed or non-designed or alter-designed or trans-designed. And the fragment of printed material. For instance, here is an example that is connected perhaps with this space, the space of the workshop at PaTI, and also the workshop, and also the experience of this morning, finding paths in language. This is a work by Jackson McClough, who was a poet and a performer from New York, and he devised these instruction pieces called the gathas, and the performers could read and activate different words or different sounds according to their own choice. So the person who is interpreting a piece of music or a piece of dance is not under the choreographer or the composer. The person who interprets works together with and has a possibility of agency within the system of composition. Finding paths and using scores as a method to energize and not control. This is really very important. A publication by Lawrence Halprin together with Anna Halprin and Jim Burns called The RSVP Cycles, Creative Processes in the Human Environment. And this publication speaks of how we use scores in creation, in art and design, and how we can think of score systems that don't control the performance of the interpreter, but rather energize the moment of creativity and help people emancipate in creativity, making things in art, making things in architecture, making things in dance. And now we see also the example of Jackson McClough that appears in the book. Here are a few additional productions from our offset printing sessions with the Order of the Third Bird and the exercise on attention. So we wrote 12 theses on attention together with the Friends of Attention and a few colleagues who have worked to create this printed tool, this printed manifesto. And I wanted to show you how the variations in print palimpsesting. There are many writings beneath a writing. Explore the notion of palimpsest, so the overlaying of writing. There are many readings beneath a reading. Nothing is erased. Inscriptions. At other times, when I hear the wind blow, I feel just hearing the wind blow makes it worthy being born. I don't know what others will think when they read this, but I think it must be good because I think it goes without effort. The living printer. And the space of the studio as a space of understanding technique and reading poetry and inviting to get closer from the machine and from the experience of this very industrial process of printing with an offset printer. The machine has also been used in our studio to create concerts of experimental music composition, such as the work we did with the composer Sarah Bach, who came to tune the offset printer so as to amplify its sounds, to augment its finest details, and allowing for the audience to come and listen to a performance of an offset machine. And we are back on the footsteps, circling the space. And inviting you to come tomorrow at 4 p.m. for an activation of sessions of listening together with the listeners. After having walked the mountain, after having experienced with the sense of touch the city of Balgiu Book City, we will welcome you for event. So thank you for your attention. 감사합니다.